Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Stephen W. Long, and you know, the name of the show is The Writing Life, and my guest today exemplifies that whole immersion into the writing life. Kendy Pearson was a teacher, 25 years, I think you said, and now an author in multiple areas. And additionally, then you teach writing, you help people get where you are.
Yes.
So welcome, Kendy Pearson.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. When I was doing a little bit of research, I mistakenly thought Heart of History was your book, but it's not, is it?
No, it's my brand.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about well, in fact, you brought some graphics here, I think, about your book, but talk a little bit about that.
Heart of History is my brand because what I really want to be known for and what I want to work on at this point in my life is historical fiction.
Okay.
And Heart of History basically is represented by pulling things out of history that people don't necessarily know about.
Sure.
Things that are unpopular, things that are kind of ugly.
Really? Okay.
Because you've got to find you've got to find your own niche. You've got to find something that hasn't been done. And for example, the Civil War series that I wrote, I've written 3 of the 4 books so far. And it basically, I wanted to pick a place with conflict because, you know, writers were always looking for conflict,
Right.
conflict. And so I knew I had to pick, you know, either Missouri or West Virginia. And I picked West Virginia because I didn't find any other books that were about people being torn apart, you know, by the Civil War like they were in West Virginia.
Okay.
And I started doing research and finding all kinds of things that were not very pretty about what happened at the beginning and the first few years of the Civil War in West Virginia. And I put a lot of real accounts in my books. There are very popular people in my books. They're not the main characters, but my
So
main characters
historically
meet them.
accurate.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I basically, you know, there's 2 ways to write historical fiction. You can take any kind of story and just plop it into a historical setting. And that story basically would work no matter where your setting was, right? But what I do is I tell people it's like writing the longest research paper you've ever written in your life, right? 100,000 words, you know.
Sure.
And so basically what I do is I do a tremendous amount of research, and then I weave my story through the real characters and the real events as much as absolutely possible, not changing real events.
So there's a couple of approaches to writing. One is plot-driven, and the other is character-driven.
Yes.
You've got the plot, I guess. Am I right?
I think I tend to be more plot-driven.
Okay.
I know that developing characters is something that I have worked extra hard on because I felt like that was a weak area. But I think, you know, history itself gives us the plot.
Sure.
There is so much stuff there that we don't know about, and when you start digging, you're like, oh, I could do this. Oh, I could have a character do that. I didn't know this happened. You know, there's so much. The book that I am researching right now, I don't have a name for it yet or anything. I've been researching it for a couple of months, and I will probably write it in its entirety in the month of January.
Really?
Because that's what I do. I write in a 30-day period. I just have this creative cauldron, and I write during that time, kind of write it in a month. And anyway, it's going to be about the Chinese, and there was the Exclusion Act in 1886, I believe it was, and it changed everything because the Chinese had come to the Pacific Northwest and to California to work on the railroad, and the railroad was done. Then they went to the gold mines, and they were here. They were all over. They were here, and nobody wanted them here anymore. They're like, kind of like, we're done with you, and they were not accepted. They were very looked down upon. They were forced in many instances to live underground, like in Seattle and Portland, in Pendleton.
Yeah, and McMinnville, literally.
Okay, I haven't researched this particular area.
Folks, we're on 3rd Street, and just down the street, the buildings there, underground is where they stayed. They slept, and obviously they came out to work, but you...
In McMinnville here.
Right, I mean, we're not
See,
too
I've been
not 2 blocks
concentrating
from
on the
there.
other side of the state.
Sure.
Because one of the things that will be in my book will be the Hells Canyon Massacre.
Okay.
A lot of people don't understand it wasn't even illegal to murder a Chinese man during those times in the 1870s, 1880s. And there's just a lot of ugliness that I was appalled myself to learn about. And so I want to bring that out. I want to bring it out of the woodwork, and I want people to see what happened. And I will weave a story in that with some kind of spiritual
you almost
thread.
have, and this is, I'm being facetious, but you have so much material that what you've told me sounds like a series. It could be more than a book.
Well, I'm going to purposefully make this one a standalone.
Okay.
But there's no reason why I cannot take some of the characters and do a spin-off.
Sure.
Although I did find out through my publishing journey that a publisher owns the characters. So
Now, I didn't know that.
Yeah, there is a lot of legal stuff you have to go through. If you publish a book with this publisher and then you want to use those same characters in another book and they don't buy that book, if you want someone else to pick up that book, there's some legal stuff that has to happen.
Oh, boy.
So I found that out from my agent. So that's something that kind of guides me a little bit. So I'm definitely making the next book a standalone.
Okay.
And it'll be hard because I love series. The series and historicals are very popular.
They are, and in a commercial sense, that's a smart thing to have a series. And I think, as we all know, when a reader falls in love with the first one, they can't wait for the second.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah, that was me. I call myself a historical fiction addict.
Okay. And I read a little bit, we've got a lot of ground to cover. You were, I think, let's just say a reader first,
Oh yes.
and then you said, why not write what you love? Did I get that right?
Yeah, when I
Okay.
switched from, I retired from teaching, I subbed for 2 years, and then I got involved with the writing community and going to conferences, and I thought, I'm going to dabble, and I started doing freelance.
Okay.
I did it for children, and I thought, well, that's fun. I did it because I had grandchildren that were little
Sure.
preschoolers at the time, and I thought, well, that's wonderful. I wonder if there's any chance I could write for grown-ups, and so I started freelancing with grown-up stuff, and that was successful. And then I found some good luck with my books, with my children's books. And then I was like, do I dare write what I love to read, and that's historical. And it fit like a glove. It was the most fun thing
I would
think
think.
I've ever done in my life.
Yeah.
And that's why I say it's like the biggest research paper ever, but I've always loved writing papers. I've always been like, oh, a research paper, yay.
I think it's probably not impossible, but I would think it would be difficult and probably unfulfilling to be, in a sense, given an assignment that you weren't interested in.
Oh, and I've done it many
Yeah.
times.
Okay.
Oh, many times. In freelance, work for hire. I've done a lot of work for hire. I write curriculum.
Okay.
And, then it becomes just a job, not something.
And not to get there yet too much, but when you say curriculum, is this writing? I mean,
Yeah,
teaching
actually,
writing?
here's a sample of one of them.
Okay.
Basically, what this is, it's Sunday school curriculum.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of curriculum you can buy. I don't know if you
Yeah.
can see this.
Do this,
here.
yeah.
Anyway, but I do all of the crafts, and I write the stories and everything that goes with it.
Okay.
They just give me the little skeletal outline, and I come up with approximately 30 different things that go into this quarterly.
Okay.
But that's a work for hire, so I get a certain amount of money for that.
Okay.
And
Now, so let's back up just a little bit. So you've got 2 books in a series, and that's the Civil War.
I've written 3 of the 4
you've written
books.
3, okay.
Yes, yes,
And now the Chinese book is a different book.
yes.
Okay. Then the reason I wanted to lay the groundwork for that, you, in some aspect of your writing, I think it would be fair to say a Christian writer?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. Everything I write is clean and has some kind of a spiritual arc or takeaway,
Okay.
which is the difference between his secular fiction and Christian fiction.
All right. So the ones that you've written have that element?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's what I wanted to get. Now you have been, when we talk about successful, an award winner more than once, and I just, if we can get a shot of this thing, that is a gorgeous award. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I have earned 3 awards, one for a children's book in 2014, and then last year, 2017, I got 2 awards, a Cascade Award from Oregon Christian Writers, and then this one is a Genesis Award from American Christian Fiction Writers. And I would say I'm probably not incorrect in saying that this is the highest award you can get for a pre-published manuscript in the United States as far as in the category of Christian fiction.
And just tell me what pre-published, what does that mean?
It means I have not signed a contract for the book yet.
And you got an award even?
Yeah, in that category.
Okay.
Genesis, all the Genesis are for the books that have not had a contract signed yet. And then there's a lot of awards out there when your book is already published, things that you may be nominated for and so forth.
If it's not, if you don't have a contract, how would the committee or the award organization know?
Well, some of these contests, they want you to send in the entire manuscript plus a synopsis.
Okay.
These awards, you send in the first, I think it's 15 pages and a synopsis.
Okay.
So, and that's what it's judged on.
I'm learning a lot today. I didn't know that as
Yeah.
well. Okay. Now, tell us about this book.
That was back in my freelance days. It's an anthology, and I have a story in there about my daughter when she was young, and yeah, so that's part of doing freelance is writing for anthologies. I have a friend who writes a lot of stuff for Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sure.
so it's a good place for people to start and beef up your bio a little bit.
Okay. And did all this take place after teaching?
Yes,
Okay.
all of it. Yeah, since 2013 is when I started dabbling in writing, and by 2000.
To me, that's yesterday. So
16, I had over 200 things, 200 articles and stories and activities all published and sold already. I haven't done anything that was free. Everything I did it to sell because I was basically working full time as a freelance writer.
I suspect that a lot of people watching are envious, at least to the extent that, how do you do that? And in fact, you teach that, don't
That's
you?
exactly what I teach, yes.
Here we go, folks.
Yes.
This is, get your recorders.
Yeah. So yes, I teach because I started mentoring quite a few different people, and they said, you know, you need to teach this stuff. You need to get it out there. And I guess it's the teacher in me, but I have put together a series called An Introduction to Writing for Publication, because writing for publication is not academic writing, which is what I'd done all my life.
Okay.
It's entirely different, has different elements. And so, for example, I will be teaching, can I talk about one coming up in November?
Absolutely, yeah.
November 10th, I'll be teaching a seminar. So it'll be like a one-day writers conference at the Kendy Library.
Okay.
It is from 10 o'clock to 3:30. Bring a sack lunch and a drink. And you do need to call the library to pre-register.
Okay.
But I'm going to be going through 4 of my classes that I have taught before, but I'm putting them all in one day. The first one is going to be about writers' markets. I'm looking at my notes here a little bit.
Yeah.
So basically what I'm doing is I'm letting people know that if you would like to dabble and see if this is something you can do, write professionally, here's how you can get started. And this is all the stuff there is out there. Everything from freelance to copywriting, which is content writing, ghost writing. Then I also
Explain
talk
that
about
term.
the book publishing industry also.
Ghostwriting is, I think I know what it is.
Yeah,
But
it's when someone hires you to write something for them because either they don't have the time or they're not a writer, they just don't have the skills.
Okay.
A lot of professional athletes will hire a ghostwriter to write their memoirs.
so
that's a
is
good
that
example.
when you see the famous athletes, let's say Joe Namath, with Bob Smith? Is that, so Bob Smith is really the writer?
Well, usually that's a collaborative thing.
Okay.
I mean, Bob Smith is getting credit. A ghostwriter is not going to get credit.
Well, that's, I guess, what I
Yes.
was wondering.
Yes, and you enter into a legal contract, but the nice thing is sometimes with ghostwriting, you can negotiate on your contract to actually get a little percentage of the royalties.
Okay,
Otherwise, it's a work for hire and it's a one-time gig.
right,
So.
okay.
But yeah, I talk about that. And book publishing, a lot of people really don't understand the world of book publishing. I talk about the differences between vanity presses, subsidy presses, self-publishing, traditional publishers, indie publishers. I go into all that and I explain the differences along with all the pros and cons. So it really, I've heard the word eye-opening. A lot of people say that. It's very informative, and it's the kind of stuff. I went in and I dug up all this information because I wanted to know. I have a unquenchable thirst for knowledge, I guess you might say.
Okay.
And so anyway, but that's the first section, and then I have 2 sections on honing your craft, and that covers the different things, little tweaky things, different things that you do for writing for publication that you might not if you were doing, let's say, academic writing or writing a term paper in college or a letter. We talk about purging the purple prose, what words you should try to eliminate. We talk about axing the adverbs, viva la voice. I explain what voice is, and special ways to handle dialogue, how to make it part of a story instead of just the narrative. So anyway, that's 2 classes, so about half of it is on that. It has nothing to do with punctuation or grammar.
Right.
Nothing, because Chicago Manual of Style is what handles all that. So, you know, you would learn how to use that just like you would any other style guide like
Sure.
APA or MLA. And then my last one, I cover the story arc and point of view. Point of view mastery is something beginning writers have a tremendous amount of trouble with, learning how to handle that.
Right.
And I cover story arcs and hooks, and great endings, great beginnings, the bookends of success. So.
In the classes that I took, a point of view was not a challenge. We paid attention to point of view. Let me say it that way. And since then, and because of these classes, I think it's really, when I read something, it's really on my mind. I have seen pretty well respected books with point of view errors.
Yes, yes. And I do the same thing. Once you learn it, you are so conscientious of it when you're reading somebody else's stuff. And even once in a while, some little errors will slip by major publishers, you know, and you're wondering why an editor didn't catch it.
Right.
But the workshops that I teach are all very interactive. So I do a lot of, with my students, I'm like, okay, let's spot the POV error, you know. And usually by the time I get done with them, they're like, oh, really? This is how that works.
Yeah.
So,
My wife said that I have ruined reading for her because where she used to just read, now she's tuned into that as well.
Yeah. And I sit there. I think I've run television watching for my husband, because he'll watch a story and he'll pull out. He goes, okay, here comes the dark moment. Okay, what do you suppose her secret is that we're going to find out?
Right.
And okay, when do you think, you know, that anyway, it's just funny because he pulls out some of the things because he's sat in on a few of my classes.
Yeah.
And then I have a 4th class or a 5th class that I'm working on, and that has to do with queries and pitches and writing proposals. And those are things that you learn at writers' conferences
get
and
the
from
whole-
professionals. Oh yeah. And that's some of these are standalone classes and so forth. And anyway, I'm pretty excited. They're a lot of fun to teach, and I try to make it very interactive. I've got some worksheets, and we try it.
So give the dates and times and place again.
Right now, for NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month in November, is just Canby on November 10th from 10 to 3:30.
Okay.
And I've got some feelers out to some other libraries. I'm hoping to get some things more on my schedule before it gets too long.
Check McMinnville.
Yes, I've been going back and forth with them, and they've got my information, and so we're going to be hopefully scheduling something.
Well, yeah, I hope so. It would be great to have one closer to home.
Yeah.
You know, you're talking about what words to eliminate, and there's a story about Mark Twain, and his advice was, whenever you want to use the word very, substitute damn, and then your editor will take it out and
There you go. Yeah,
and you'll be fine.
Yeah, I have a whole worksheet that I do in my classes where I've got, instead of very whatever, you say this instead of very, and then people start using their brains to come up with things to substitute, you know, and yeah, that's really good.
We have, English has so many, it's a big vocabulary, and we can find just the right word, rather than skirt around it like I'm doing right now. But but it's a little bit of a work.
It is, and you know what? You can't be a lazy writer.
Right.
That is, to me, that is one of the trademarks of a lazy writer. You didn't take time on this
to find
just the right word, and this is why the two sections on honing your craft. What I tell people is, you don't write like you talk. If you write like you talk for publication, nobody's going to publish it.
Right.
It's too boring. It's too wordy. We Americans, we talk fast. We use a lot of words. But you know what? When it comes down to reading, you want the content. Just get to the bottom line. Tell me what's going on.
Yeah.
And show, don't tell.
Exactly.
Another thing that I cover. So yeah, I'm always saying, you don't write like you talk. Don't do it.
Well, I remember we were told that a dialogue gives the illusion of real speech. It's not real speech. When we read it, we accept it as real speech, but it really isn't.
Well, you know, I came across that a lot because my series takes place in West Virginia, and you've got people from the mountains.
Oh, dialogue.
That,
Yeah, or
the
dialect. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I've had to really delve into a lot of dialect research. But when I first started my first book, and then I sat down with an editor, they're like, oh no, you know, if you write it like it sounds, you've got apostrophes everywhere. You've got,
Yes.
yeah, everything is contracted.
Right.
Lots of contracted words, and so I had to learn right away. You can't write like that, and so you can give them a little flavor, and then you stop, because guess what? The reader is smart. You
they'll
get
fill
that
that in.
reader to understand that character and to hear that character's voice. The rest of the book, they've got it. You don't need to keep spoon feeding them all of the y'alls and tain't never, you know,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a very good point.
Interestingly, I have heard or read that the speech in Appalachia, which we culturally seem to think that it's a lower class or less educated, in fact mimics the English that came from England much closer than California.
Yes, it does. Actually, it's the Scots that settled in the mountains there that really brought in that mountain dialect. So many of their words that people on the West Coast have no idea what they mean. They come from Gaelic, and they come from the Scots. So that's really where that came from. There's so many words that are bounded, and the dialect, the way they say things, are from the Scots.
I wonder
that
about
settled
the
in there.
structures as well as the vocabulary. Do you know?
No, I don't think I know very much about that.
And I don't either.
I did read in one of my dialect studies that, I can't remember it now because it's been a few years, but the sentence structure, there is something unique about the real deep mountain folk.
Yeah.
How there's some part of speech that they take out all the time.
Okay.
Or something. Anyway, that was just wonderful studying it. But you can't fill a book full of that for the normal reader. You can only drop it in and season it like salt and pepper.
What a great analogy. And again, it gives the illusion of real speech.
Yes.
Yeah. It would be boring. And I want to backtrack just a little bit. You talk about getting just the right word. My primary writing teacher was Elizabeth George, who is the mystery writer and so on. And I think it was her first book, and the first sentence of the first book, I remember, it was a solipsism of the worst kind. That was her opening sentence. And boy, did that send me to the dictionary.
That's a
As
book.
she does.
That's good.
Yeah.
You know, this is one of my pet peeves. Okay, so people that just read contemporary fiction, a lot of them, if you give them a historical book and you actually use historical terminology
Oh boy, yeah.
or dialect, the first thing they will do is, no, I've been involved with critique groups a lot, but this is common. They'll go, I don't know this word. And you know what? To a historical writer, it's like, so that's the word they used back then.
Right.
And if you really want to know what it is,
Particularly
and
if that's a
you can't figure
criticism.
it out, you better go look it up. But don't criticize the book for
No.
occasionally having words that we today in 2018 don't understand.
Yeah.
Because guess what? Yes, we have a big vocabulary, but in some ways it's shrinking because our roots, like I talked about, you know, the mountain talk,
Right.
we're losing our roots very quickly.
We're
And so-
becoming homogenous because of mass media. So when you see a newscaster, they speak in sort of the accepted standard English, and then regardless of the region that we're in when we view it, that's what we think.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
it's becoming standardized.
Yeah.
There was a book that I read in college called Miss Ravenel's Conversion, and I think it was published in the late 1800s. And they talked about, and I was a college kid, so which is synonymous with a knucklehead. And they were talking. Miss Ravenel performed her toilet. Well, that's the way So she.
Yes. Yes.
She washed her face, I suppose.
Right.
But
yeah, it's a noun for their morning routine.
Yeah, as an 18-year-old, I just thought that was hilarious. So,
But if you'd read a bunch of historical fiction, it wouldn't have bothered you because
no.
you would have been used to it.
well, and you get it pretty quickly. But even, oh my gosh, Steinbeck, I mean, which is not a contemporary, but I don't think of it as old. But then you read some of the stuff, the words or the structure that he uses, and to me it's jarring at this point when I'm thinking of it one way and it comes out something else.
And you know, it's funny you should mention some of the classics, the classical writers, because a lot of people today, a lot of people don't read the classics anymore,
Right.
because our communication has become so abbreviated. They don't remember I said you don't write like you speak.
Sure.
It's got too many words. It's eloquent. It's literary in style, but people today don't have the attention span for it. Does that sound terrible? But they want to get to the point. Get to the point. I want to hear the story. Don't make it all crazy, flowery with lots of extra words.
I think attention span may be part of it, but I also wonder if when we have so many avenues for entertainment now, compared to, again, let's say turn of the century, turn of the early 1900s or 1800s, the entertainment was after dinner, people would sit around and read to each other.
Yes.
Well, that was the whole thing. And so not only were the authors paid by the word, Charles Dickens as an example, you didn't want to shorten it up because you were being paid by the word, but also this is an evening's entertainment. To
stretch it out.
To stretch it out and paint a picture and so on. And I think, and I've said this before, I've heard that writing used to be more narrative and now it's more scene, and the reason for that in large part is movies. We see things as scenes now where they used to process a narrative.
Yeah, that's why POV is so important, and we're always saying show, don't tell. We need to see it through the eyes of the character. What are they smelling? What are they seeing? And it's an experiential thing.
Right. Yeah. I know both in my reading and writing, I love that detail. And in fact, and maybe you can comment on this, when I'm writing well, it's almost like a daydream. I'm sort of somewhere else, and I'm in that place, and I'm smelling it, and I'm feeling the breeze or whatever. You as well?
I do that, and in fact, this is very typical of me, typing with my eyes closed.
Sure.
I'm literally like, what am I smelling? What am I hearing? And I will sit there and type with my eyes closed, and you just get into it. And if something happens, it's really frustrating. Somebody walks in the room or the dog barks, and the moment is, yes, it breaks the spell. And so I really like the actual deep writing, not necessarily the editing, which is so important. But yeah, when you are creating that story, and that's exactly it, yes.
Right. I've heard, and again, I read, an aid to writing might be some physical object. So, I'm going to make this up. A smooth stone that you plucked from the river if you're writing something and the scene maybe takes place along the river.
Yeah, so I have a couple of writer friends that play period music.
Okay.
While I couldn't do that. I'm a musician, and the minute I start hearing music, I start analyzing it. So I need silence when I'm typing, when I'm writing. But that's what they do. It gets them in the mood. It gets them more into the scene.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you know what? I was right about something. We didn't get to cover everything, but we're out of time.
That's
and
amazing.
I so appreciate, and I really appreciate you mentioning the little conference that you're going to do. I think that's going to be so valuable for people. So I would encourage folks to seek it out and sign up.
If they want to check the schedule on my website, I put things up as they're scheduled. If there's something that they can attend, they can always check the website.
Sure. Caroline, do we have that? Maybe she showed the website already. Yeah, but they can go to that.
my yes, it's up there now.
There you go. Okay. Well, folks, that's it for this time. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Stephen W. Long, Kendy Pearson, and we'll just see you next time on The Writing Life. Be well. Thank you.
What do you think? We done?
I don't know. You guys want to do one just with yourself
as
without
long
me
as
doing
they
the
think we're
bongos?
done, if
No,
they got
no,
enough, they got enough.
They got enough? Probably. Okay, sounds good.
Let's go lunch.
Oh.
I'm hungry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can just bite too.